very easy to label the youth of today as, you know, no work ethic, can't be bothered, you know, and stuff like that. And I've met over the years some fantastic youngsters. I mean, one guy I used to work with this gym, you know, was far and away, at the age he was at, he had more ability than I had at that age, you know, without a shadow of a doubt, you know, and I'm still very good friends with him now. I talk to him and he's kind of progressing his career. He's gone into a different angle other than recruitment. He's doing well for himself. But do you find that the youth of today that you have encountered work-wise different to the youth of yesteryear?
What, my year?
Yeah, well, you know, even mine. You know,
yeah.
I mean,
I think each generation would say that
the next
you know,
one's
the work,
bad.
yeah, the work ethic is different, or in comparison. Unfortunately, the way that the modern society is, that everybody wants everything now. And that's probably one of the reasons why we're in the situation we are as a, you know, as a country and so on. But I still think there are pockets of you know, youth where the work ethic has been ingrained in them, and they run with it. You know, I see it all the time. But I also see the other end of the spectrum where, take one of my customers for example, where my wife happens to work for them. Some of the guys that come in for interview, they just don't have the interview skills. They don't have, so they wonder why they don't get employed. We need to help them. We need to help these people. Whether that's developing that in schools, or getting them ready for the, you know, for the interview process, I don't know. But you know, something needs to be done.
But I think a big part of that is, and I mean this is still related to training and everything, is I think schools, teachers are trying to do it with one hand tied behind their back. You know, because I guarantee you when you were at school and when I were at school, there were differences. But the differences from when I was at school to someone at school even now, you didn't get shouted at as much, you didn't get told you're an absolute idiot, you know, and really put in your place. And I'm very fortunate that a teacher got through to me towards the tail end of my schooling time in a private conversation where he shouted and swore at me, and you know, and I was like, well, you can't. But that's what life's like in the real world. You know, when you go out to work, it is very different. With training, discounting obviously your own fantastic training, what examples have you seen that struck a chord with you where you thought, actually, yeah, that's good? You know, is there anything sort of you sort of harbour one thing where you think, yeah, actually, that was a fantastic bit of training?
Oh, we put me on the spot there.
All right. Well, what do you think of that? Social media.
Okay.
Has it impacted your business as much, or do you think it's a big white lie? Or
no, I don't think it's a big white lie. Actually, I think. I don't use social media as much as I would like to. I think a part of that is that I still need to understand it. There are certain elements, you know, the usual, I'm trying to build a Facebook page, I'm trying to use all elements. When you consider the amount of people out there using social media, it's a marketplace that you'd be an absolute idiot not to be involved in my view.
Do you see many trainers, competitors, other business people, do you see many people making money out of it though?
Well,
is that a fallacy? Is it a lot of work?
It is a lot of work, and there's one particular company that I'm working with on and off, just on a sort of advice giving basis, that is doing exceptionally well. But they're tapping into the whole let's help other trainers become good business people, and that's quite a niche. But I don't know that people are making, you know, I don't think social media is making us millionaires, let's put it that way. It's another stream to our marketing strategy, but I don't think it's, you know, certainly in the training world, in my opinion, it is going to be something that's going to, you can rely on solely.
In terms of, you know, I mean, I tend to find, and again I think this is a personality thing, the very brutal, harsh, honest training is the stuff I respond to better.
I think that depends on your background. For example, you come from a sales background predominantly, and I know it's pigeonholing people to a degree, but I believe you have certain traits and certain types of people. For example, when I worked in the insurance industry, we had our sales team and our customer service team and our admin teams. Never the three would mix, because they were separate entities, whereas nowadays you try and get the business to work as a unit. In those days it wasn't the case, And if you shout and screamed at your top salesman because they were underperforming, they'd respond to that and get on with it. If you did the same to one of your admin guys, they'd fall apart.
Yeah.
Because you got the right people in the right places to do the right work.
Certain personalities are attracted to certain job roles.
Absolutely.
I'm
not sure whether that's any different today, but it just means that I think people in business are starting to get the whole unit working together in a little way.
Taking the sales example, I've encountered lots of people. I've essentially broadly, with the training I've delivered, pigeonholed people into 5 types of sort of trainers. I won't go into that now, but they're largely driven by personality and what types of things they respond to. You get certain people like the organiser, they've got a million, got spreadsheets for everything. They keep all their emails from 6 years ago. They're the only people that are on top of the database. They'll put their call notes on, they'll set their reminders. So 6 months later, they'll get a flash up saying ABC, their thing's up for tender in a couple of months, and they'll make that introduction. But they're not necessarily the most dynamic, but they get where they are because they have a structure that they follow, and they relentlessly stick to it. The downsides to that type of person are, if they're off ill or they get hit by a bus, no one can find anything because they've got their own system for keeping all their, for certain parts of their notes, or they'll store the contract information elsewhere, or they can become very process driven. And when you're in a depressed market, such as we've experienced, they find it hard to get out of the doing all the admin bits. Their contracts will be flawless. They'll have them signed, dated, everything will be in there. If a customer wants to change something, they'll amend the contract. Whereas you get certain types of salespeople, their paperwork is shocking, it's barely done. When you come to find a contract the client signed, no one's ever seen it. It's done on a shake of a hand and, a fax that's now faded.
The money's in the bank.
Yeah, it is, but, and both types, all different types of salespeople can work. They'll take a different path to get there. And I think sales as an industry is very much like that, but when you take, are you encountering, say for example, the training you're doing in finance industry, are you encountering different types of personalities coming into it that you might not have seen 10 years ago?
I think so. It used to be a very sort of, I suppose, dogged environment where people would be fighting for the next sale and what have you. There's a lot more interaction between people now. It's not just self. Despite the climate, you'd think there'd be people looking out just for number one. But I find that there's a lot of camaraderie and people helping each other in the businesses I've been working with. The interesting thing that you mentioned before was about selling the concept of training within a business. I worked with this finance company and I'm still doing an ongoing program with them. But when we did the first day's training with them, the business hadn't sold it to them internally, and it was a real tough job to get these guys on side, and it was a sales program, but it was like, well, we know all this, we've been taught all this, you can't teach me anything. Had it been sold in the right way about it being an ongoing process about developing the sales, refreshing themselves, then perhaps it would have been different. But yeah, it was a tough time. So I think there are swings and roundabouts depending on where you go.
Now, taking a huge sweeping generalisation here, you've come from the military background. Which military sector were you in? Was it army? Yeah, so you're army, yeah?
Yeah,
army. Most people that are outside of the military, their preconception of how you're taught in the army is do as you're told, don't think. Do you find that your army training, your army background helped you to deliver the civilian life? Or were there positives you took? Of course there will be positives, but what were the positives you took out of it that have helped you in life now, apart from having the shiniest shoes I've ever seen?
I think the key thing for me was, obviously there's the discipline element, which goes hand in hand, but you can lose that to a degree because it's not constant when you come into civilian life. I did struggle when I left at first because it is, there's an element of indoctrination in a way within the military, but as I was teaching in the military anyway, it was a sort of natural progression when I left. So I went into selling life insurance and pensions, and it was a relatively easy transition. And it was almost a self-employed position. I was selling a company's product, but I was
kind of like a reseller
for them. So that worked for me at the time, and it certainly fitted what I need. But I found that the positives were discipline, being quite forthright as well. When you need to get something done, then you go and get it done, and if you can't do it, you find someone who can. Whereas others perhaps wouldn't be quite that assertive. So I found that
that's something very true about being a small business owner, particularly locally, where if you don't get out and attend networking events, you don't go and talk to the companies that's offices are opposite yours, you're going to Jack Jones all the time, and as grateful, and I'm very fortunate. I know your wife is very understanding and has got a good head for your business. Mine has as well, but I think there are a lot of people that don't have that
support.
That don't have another half that will give you the kick you need, or give you the lift you need, or put an arm around you and and sort of say, look, we'll be all right. But with, as you say, when you've got a business, particularly small business where a lot of the show's aimed at, if you're not going out and talking to someone, it can become a very lonely place. So I think for a lot of people, training could be quite a good option, and it might not be the term training they need, it might be some consultancy, i.e. an outlet to someone's ear to bend, or say, look, I'm thinking of doing this, am I a blithering idiot, or am I on the right track, and I think...
I use other small businesses to help, in terms of understanding, my profit and loss and what have you. I don't know everything about running a business, but what I do know is I've developed a lot of relationships with people that can help me. So I can pick up the phone and say, look, I'm stuck, how do I do this? And they're quite happy to help. So you're absolutely right, building relationships with other business people, you're certainly in your local area, is paramount. I've taken my foot off the pedal a little bit, and I'm just starting to get back into that now. And
but that's back to the people element we started talking about right at the very beginning. And it's your customers are people. When the economy is that we will only trade with computers, when technology's reached that stage, well, not even that, where rather than selling your product to an individual, an employer, a company may employ, pay a computer to handle all that, that sort of stuff 20, 30 years away or whatever. But when that happens, it will be different. But until then, I think, and even then, people are going to be important with whatever we do.
Well, I think we have to change with the times, even as small businesses. And I know sometimes there is a cost to that, which can be debilitating for a small business. If we look at the current high street, at this moment in time, that some of these big businesses are going under because they didn't adapt to, for example, the internet sales.
It was at HMV have gone today, Chessup's went a few days ago.
Yeah, that sort of thing, in my opinion, I still think the UK is run by small business. I know it's a bit of a cliche.
And the state.
Yeah.
State's too big an employer. But then again, if you take it back though, when was the last time, I'll put you on the spot, when was the last time you went into town to do a day's shopping?
Honestly,
yeah,
I can't remember.
And we've just had Christmas.
Yeah.
I didn't buy anything at the high street. No. You didn't buy anything at the high street.
My shopping was online.
So was I. Why do you shop online?
I think the key element is convenience.
Yeah, for me there's two. There's
I don't need to
convenience
easily leave the office.
and diversity.
Absolutely,
Quite often what you're buying will be cheaper priced, probably, or you ain't got to go out and get it, so it saved you a gazillion pounds to park in a town because it's completely overpriced. You didn't spend the fuel, which is a ridiculous amount to get anywhere nowadays. All those other little things add up, but you've got a wider shopping pool and you ain't got to get anywhere to do it, and stuff comes to you. But through training and education, you think these high street stores would have realised a long time ago that maybe the high street's had its day.
But if you look at the music industry, for example, they don't want to lose the high street presence. It's all well and good. You think about it. If everything was done online, you've got Amazon, and who else?
Depending on what you want.
Apple.
Yeah.
So if they become the only way of sort of music downloads and what have you, and there's no high street presence, it'll be a sad day. So I think
it's worrying.
Something needs to be done to.
But then you look at it from an authoring point of view. There have been a number of other sites spin up, Smashwords and various other ones that have come up for book downloads. But there's still going to be a market for I want a physical book to read. Whether Waterstones rather should should endure that. But then
that's
again,
why we need to diversify as businesses. We need to look at other options and have several strings to our bow, and not just be right. That's what we've always been good at, and that's what we're going to do. Whereas they need to be sort of forward thinking.
with the training, how, I mean, have you brought in much technology to deliver training, or are you still very much, do you think the market is still very much, I deliver to you, sitting opposite you, sort of thing?
There's an element of e-learning. Some of our guys like to do online programs, for example, which is something that we offer via third parties. It's their business, not mine, but my business is actual, a physical presence.
Yeah, press on the flagship.
Yeah, I'm looking at webinars and things like that, which I think have a major place, but it's about developing them, and that's a cost to a small business.
A lot of our clients make huge sums from webinars.
I think it's the way forward.
They'll put on a conference or an exhibition, and then they'll sell the webinar, or they'll give the webinar away to people that paid to attend the event, and other people who couldn't make it can buy it for a cost, sort of thing. And it's a huge growth area. But you see, it's funny because e-learning, I remember 12, 13, 15 years ago, everyone going, e-learning, and it never quite happened.
No, that's true, because it is part of the training mix, really. That's what, certainly I think employers see it as. They don't see it as always a standalone. Some it's convenience. There are companies out there, certainly the larger ones, that have an infrastructure of e-learning within their business because they have 40 offices around the UK, or perhaps they've got a global business that the only way to get everyone to have the same training is to make sure they use e-learning.
I think something that comes out of training that I think is very good is when people can take training and make it their own.
Mm-hmm.
When a presenter or a trainer or a deliverer of coursework stands up and delivers it, and I mean, the example, I was sort of chuckling as I was driving to work this morning listening to TalkSport. There was a guy on there talking about nutritional advice and training. He was an American guy, and he had every sales cliche catchphrase in it, and I just thought, God, what he was saying was absolutely right, but because he talked as though he'd read a script on how to say it, was just totally off-putting. Yeah. I'm sure to fellow Americans and stuff, it's perfectly normal, but I mean, literally, he went through the entire bag of cliche catchphrases, and it's so bad that I was almost moved to actually text the show and say what he said was great, but the way he delivered it was terrible. Because it's kind of like nails down a blackboard. I was thinking, oh God, he's done that one as well. Oh no, will it end? But with the types of training, sort of coming back to what we mentioned earlier, what sort of things have you seen that have caught your eye, or essentially you've added to how you deliver? Is there anything sort of?
I think one of the key things that for me is that I'm quite insistent that when working with existing and new customers, that we do some kind of analysis. There are a lot of companies out there that just say, right, our guys need refresher training on X. So let's say the sales, or some of the managers have had a few difficult members of staff and they haven't handled it too well, so let's do a management training day. To my mind, that's really not the way forward. It's just to suddenly think, oh, we need training. An analysis of what they really need and how the functionality of the business is and what training really will make an impact. And that's ultimately what training is about. It's not our egos, it's actually, does this training program add value to the business, increase profits, reduce losses, improve motivation within the workplace? If it does that and there's a tangible benefit, then we've done our job, and that's what really counts. And sometimes, one-day trainings, they have their place, but it's not always the way forward, and that's why it's important for us as training providers to be able to analyse and do perhaps a training needs analysis on what a business really needs, working in partnership with their internal infrastructure.
So an interesting thought on that is, I mean, I know from sort of training I've delivered and yourself as well, sometimes when you're talking to someone and they say, we need X training to be delivered, management training, and you go in and realise, well, actually it's not, that isn't your issue here. Mm-hmm. It's almost like an MOT. You put your car in thinking, look, you say to the mechanic, I know the brakes are a bit dodgy, they may need replacing, and you talk to the mechanic and he says, well, actually no, it's it's fluid in your brakes that's wrong, the discs themselves are fine, or it could be something completely unrelated. But with training analysis you can uncover that sort of stuff. Yet, do you still in today's market, and I think I know the answer to this, find companies, when you say to them, someone comes to you and says, I need X training, you say, well, we'd like to do an analysis to you, and they're like, no, I know what I need.
Yeah,
and it will be an uphill, you'll have to kind of drag them uphill to get the analysis beforehand, just so you know what you deliver.
Sometimes you have to offer the analysis as a loss leader, because it's, from my mind, if they're going to spend a considerable sum on developing their people, we need to make sure that there's right, because unfortunately training has come with a bad press occasionally where, it was a nice day out of the office, but it didn't really make a difference in our business, and that is because A, it probably wasn't right for them in the first place, and B, they didn't do any follow-up internally. One of the problems with businesses is they invest in training and do nothing internally beyond the training. Our process is that they must take something from that internally and run with it. So for example, if it's ongoing coaching by their internal trainers or their internal coaches, that is something that will help the training embed and make a difference, not just to having a delivery day.
I suppose sort of final point, is there anything that's different about the local training market to what you've seen in other geographical areas? We've focused on Suffolk on the show. Is there anything you see, good, bad, indifferent, or any one or two examples of things you see that vary?
Loyalty. I think that's one of the things. When you work with Suffolk business in particular, it can sometimes be tough to get through the door, but I found on a personal level that once you're through the door, my customers, my local Suffolk business customers, are extremely loyal and will make sure that they give you...
It's hard to lose them.
Well, pretty much.
Hard to get them, but hard to lose them.
Hard to lose them. But you have to produce the goods.
It's funny, that's a point that's come up a number of times on the show, is that it can take a while to win people over.
It's great working with Suffolk. It really is.
And thank you very much for coming in. It's been great to have you. It's been good to see you again as well. It's been a while since we've bumped into each other. So thanks very much. That's Chris Barnard from Barnard Training, and thank you and goodbye.